Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I'm Tyler here with my brother Ryan, and today we are breaking down the Cleveland Browns 2024 offseason moves, all their departures, acquisitions, and even we will be reviewing their 2024 draft picks. And then at the very end of the video, we're going to be going over their 2024 schedule and giving our record prediction on how we think the Browns are going to do this season. So be sure to stay tuned for the entire video. But before we get into it, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell to get notified when we create new content. We have videos coming out every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And also, once the season starts, we will be doing a weekly prediction video for the upcoming Browns game every single week throughout the season. And you're not going to want to miss that. So like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Ryan, let's pull up. These are the stats for the Cleveland Browns 2023 seasons. We got them for Pro Football Reference here as well. And I don't know how to think of the offensive team rankings. It looks like if you just look at these numbers, it looks like they had an average offense, and maybe in a sense that they did. But then when Joe Flacco got on, it was like they had like one of the top offenses in the league. So I don't even know how to look at their numbers. I want to talk more about the offense when we get to like their depth chart. Unless if you have opinions on it. To me, though, this defense was top notch. I think led by Myles Garrett, they made the right moves by bringing in good supporting role pieces, and they were able to retain a lot of those guys and even brought in a guy that I really like. I think is going to help out a lot. But the amount of pass pressure that they can get, I think it's one of the reasons why they have the top passing defense in yards allowed. That's why they're 6th in overall sacks with 49. And so the defense, I think, is kind of what makes or break this team. Ironically, then that's what kind of broke them in the playoffs, is because the Texans just kept on scoring these long touchdowns getting them. But then when they were able to get after the quarterback and the offenses were really stagnant, I felt like the whole team just gelled really well together, and it kind of gave the offense some confidence because they won a lot of games with QBs that should not have won games last year at all.
Yeah, no, and that to me, I think, is what is so impressive about the offense, was that they were able to maintain an average status, even though they had a litany of injuries. Like they had injuries on the offensive line, they had injuries in that quarterback room, obviously, in the running back room. Yeah. Like it was just, they got decimated, and they were still able to maintain a very high level of play. And then the other, like that defense, Myles Garrett is a monster. He's the best defensive player, I think, in football right now, especially after Aaron Donald retired this offseason. Yeah. There's not really much of a debate, and the Browns having him is a huge weapon. So all in all, I think the Browns, this is a very repeatable recipe for them, especially if that quarterback play can get more consistent. I think it'll be really interesting to see what they can do here in 2024. So let's go ahead and move on to their departures here. And again, I think this is a good sign. There's not really a whole lot of notable departures. Sione Takitaki, Garon Christian, Anthony Walker Jr., Jordan Elliott. Like, yeah, these are role players that gave you some quality snaps last year, but you're not losing extremely valuable pieces in this offseason.
Yeah. Whenever you lose starters, or if you lose guys who are like your sixth man, so to say, it's always concerning. But at the same time, though, to your point, it's not like these guys were like record breakers. I feel even Jordan Elliott, who was on there and played a lot of good minutes. He started 14 of the 17 games that he played. He only had 2.5 sacks here, and we're going to get to a guy who I think is even better than him. That they brought on as well to help with that defensive line. But even then, to your point, though, there's nobody here I think that like really sticks out to me. I mean, Joe Flacco is obviously going to be the one, but because he just had a crazy career in Cleveland, I would say the numbers that he was putting up during his time there. But in general, though, you want Deshaun Watson to be doing that. Like that's why you pay Deshaun Watson. So I think that production in theory should be there still. If Joe Flacco was able to do it, then Deshaun Watson should be able to do it. And even on the guys that are still free agents, I think the fact that Kareem Hunt, I wouldn't be surprised if Kareem Hunt goes back to Cleveland just in case of depending on how Nick Chubb does or if Jerome Ford gets hurt. Like I think he'll always be there. I think he likes being there. He probably would like to be on contract right now, but that's a separate conversation. But he just fits very well into I think kind of what Cleveland is trying to do. But in general though, not it seems like a lot of names, but not really. I think anybody that jumps out at me, kind of as you said, that is going to be a major loss.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think just a good transition into their free agent signings. You go look, everyone that they replaced or that they lost, they pretty much replaced and then some. I think, especially with the addition of Jerry Jeudy, this offense is going to be really good. They signed Deontay Foreman and Naheem Hines to both of those guys can give them some valuable snaps at running back. Jordan Hicks comes in replacing Sione Takitaki. Quentin Jefferson comes in as well at the defensive tackle position. So a lot of guys I think that can come in and give them some valuable snaps. Devin Bush getting a nice veteran presence there in that linebacker room. Maybe more of a outside linebacker, edge rusher type. But yeah, I like a lot of these signings. They got good value, especially would they get Jerry Jeudy for a 5th or a 6th?
Maybe. I don't think it was that much. Well, no, it would have been about a 5th or a 6th or something like that. So
yeah,
and that's I like him in this offensive system. I like that you go and get Tyler Huntley, who I think is going to be more similar to I think the Deshaun Watson playing style in case if Deshaun Watson does get hurt, and he has still good game playing experience going back to Baltimore as well. Also, to insider information as well, if you ever need anything. But Quentin Jefferson is going to be the guy to me. I think you replace Jordan Elliott with Quentin Jefferson here. And I still think this defensive line is one of the best in the NFL. And we're going to go over the depth chart here in a second. But Devin Bush, as you mentioned, it is another guy that they brought in and can help replace Anthony Walker and Sione Takitaki as well. So I just kind of like who they brought in. Also, to their draft picks, the one that sticks out to me, I like the Zach Zinter pick as well. I think that's going to be good value for the offensive line. And seeing how he does, like I said, he had a later season leg injury. We all saw that at the Buckeye Wolverine game. But even if it does take a little bit of time, I still think it's going to be great development for him when it comes to it's going to be great for the Browns to develop him because I think he's going to be a great NFL player.
Yeah, no, I agree. A little bit of like a stash pick there, but I like what they're doing. Let's move on. Let's get into their offensive depth charts here, and we can just kind of go over where everybody stands. So, in some other videos, I talked about other wide receiver trios. This is a fantastic wide receiver group. Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy. Then you have Jamari Thrash that they just drafted, Cedric Tillman that they drafted high last year, David Bell as well. I think it's a really good group. And that's just the top 6 guys that are competing. And then I think you throw in David Njoku into that pass catcher room. This is one of the best pass catcher groups in the league. And also, I'll even throw Naheem Hines, who's a really solid third down pass catching back in that group.
Yeah, so. And I think then to build on that, to have a great pass game, you have to have a great run game. If Nick Chubb's able to come back healthy, which I hope he is because he's really fun to watch play, I think they have one of the best offensive lines in the league as well. And not only too, on top of that, with how many guys got hurt last year during the season, a lot of their backups even got good playing time, like DeJuan Jones, Luke Weichler as well.
Yeah.
And so I think there's going to be even good depth for this team also. And then now you throw if Zach Zinter develops the way that you expect him to develop. Yeah, this is just on paper. It's just very exciting to see what they have going on in Cleveland. Then to me, I just think then the biggest question mark is going to be is which Deshaun Watson is going to be the quarterback. Is it going to be the quarterback that got him the big contract, or has it been the quarterback that we've seen kind of post everything that's happened where it seems like he's just still rusty? It just seems like he's still he had a couple of good games last year, the few that he played, but even then too, it seemed like he was still almost kind of shaking the rust off, trying to get back into that game rhythm, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that to me, I think is going to be the big driver of this offense, whether he can be what he was in Houston or not. So
yeah,
all in all, I think he has all of the pieces around him. It's just going to be whether he can, like you said, get back into the swing of it. So let's get to the defense here. So really that front 4, 5, they run such a weird front because Myles Garrett will literally line up over a center and a nose tackle position, and then he'll line up it as a wide 9 and everything in between. And so it's really interesting to kind of follow what this defense does formationally. But I think you look, Myles Garrett, everybody else will kind of fall into line on that front. Linebacker wise, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Jordan Hicks play well behind those guys. And then another really good group here with the secondary: Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Grant Delpit, Juan Thornhill, Martin Emerson has come in and given them some really good snaps the last couple seasons as well. Excuse me. So I really like this group. They don't have the most amount of depth, but at the same time, all of those guys are playing at a really high level, and when healthy, this is one of the best secondary groups in the league as well.
Yeah, that would be my biggest concern is just depth. But to your point, though, is if they can stay healthy, I mean, that doesn't matter because on paper it is one. I mean, just top to bottom, even to Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah had a great season last year as well. And
yeah,
I just talking about the secondary when healthy keeps getting better and better. And so I think the biggest thing is just going to be if they can stay healthy, and also too, one thing I think to help out is going to be if the offense can get more consistent. That I think it's going to help out the defense because this defense, I think, is going to be at its best when they allow Myles Garrett just to pin his ears back, just go after it. They know there's going to be a passing down.
Oh, and I was going to say, and like that to me, even if they lose some of the guys on the back end, like I think Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome have been in and out with some minor injuries over the past few years. As long as Myles Garrett stays healthy, this defense will be top 10 because everything kind of revolves around him in this defense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was going to say is as long as they can get the offense in as many passing down situations as possible, if this offense is able to do what we think it can do, just looking at it on paper, and get into some high scoring games, I think that really is going to benefit this Browns defense and just winning more games, so to say, and allowing them to win more games. And so I think to me, this roster, especially the starting 22, I would put up against the majority of the teams, and that's what kind of looking at their 2024 schedule. It's going to be very unique to see how they end up doing here. But with week 1 going up against Dallas here, that's going to be a game that you're going to be watching your boys. It's going to be his first game commentating with Fox. But then at Jacksonville, hosting New York Giants, at Las Vegas, at Washington, at Philly. Not too many games that I'm not going to say they're going to go 6-0, but I mean they're not going to be like. There's not a game that's obvious to me where like they're probably an underdog in that game here. I think they can beat Dallas. I think they can beat Jacksonville. I think if Philly's playing the way they were playing at the end of the year, everybody could beat Philly. So I think if they come through there 4-2, that's a bonus. 5-1, I think would be excellent, and 6-0 is possible during that stretch.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely think 6-0 is possible. To me, there's really. I think they should beat Dallas. I don't want to say handily, but I'm not super high on Dallas this season. Mm-hmm. And Jacksonville and Philly, I think, are the two teams because can Philly bounce back and be what they were at the beginning of last year? And then Jacksonville, when healthy, was a pretty solid, well-rounded team. So I think that that's going to be an interesting development there. What are they able to do? In those matchups, but I'm going to take this defense over anybody, especially in the beginning part of the season when teams are still figuring themselves out. It doesn't help that both of those games are on the road, but they do have a nice home stretch here to start off this second column with Cincinnati, Baltimore, and Los Angeles. Cincinnati and Baltimore are going to be two really tough games for them, but they get to have them both at home, and then they have the Chargers right before the bye week. I like that setup. And then week 11, they play at New Orleans, Pittsburgh on a short week, then Denver on an extended week, I guess. And then they play Pittsburgh again to close out this second tier here. I like that as well. I think that's very favorable for them. Yeah, I think they should. I'm also not as high on Pittsburgh. I think they will continue to regress. And then Denver and New Orleans, they should be they're just much better roster wise than those teams. So
Well, in Denver, New Orleans, they almost play actually kind of the same kind of football. It is where
yeah,
it's almost like there's a score limit. Like if you can get above 24 points, it's like you're going to
yeah,
beat
then
both of those teams. And so their toughest
yeah,
games are going to be the divisional games. I mean, they have 4 AFC, they have 4 divisional games during this stretch here, and anything can really happen in those games. I know you're not high on Pittsburgh, but I bet Pittsburgh still wins one of those games. And it's possible then
yeah,
too that they lose to Cincinnati and Baltimore early on. So that's if we go by my possibility, that's 3 losses right there, and who knows what could happen with the Chargers, Saints, and Denver as well, because Saints and Denver are still going to be on the road. Those are still going to be tough games. So, but in general, though, to your point, it is going to be a much more favorable, I think, kind of during the stretch. But we'll have to kind of wait and see. And so, I will say these Final Four games might be the toughest Final Four games that I can recall, with Kansas City at Cincinnati,
yeah,
Miami, and then at Baltimore. Essentially getting you ready for the playoffs if you're going to be making playoffs, because all 4 of those teams are at minimum going to be vying for the playoffs and shooting for a wild card spot. 2 of those teams, Cincinnati, actually all 4 of those teams will be in the division hunt for their respective divisions as well. So crunch time games for all those teams. We're really going to see what the Browns are made of. The Browns are going to want to have to utilize, or definitely capitalize on the easier portion of their schedule leading up to this point, because I can see a possibility where they lose all 4 of those games.
yeah. I don't. So I like them against Miami at home. The other 3 I think are going to be tough. But yeah, that's a really tough way to close out the season, especially like how I have it. Like Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Baltimore are neck and neck for the division. So you have 2 division games in 3 weeks that are going to decide whether you're going to be a wild card team or probably the 1 seed in the AFC.
Yeah.
So, and then to throw Kansas City on top of that. Speaking of the 1 seed,
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be really interesting to see.
And I was going to say, and that's fair point too. Also about the Miami game, sorry if there's a lag, but about the Miami game, they will be up in Cleveland in January, and so, but yeah, it'll be interesting fighting for that 1 seed because KC's going to be in that battle as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. So let's move on to our record predictions here. So I had the Browns at 12-5. I did have them going 1-3 in that final stretch, but until then, I believe that put them at 9-2 going into that. Or yeah, no, 11-2 going into that. So a really good season for the Cleveland Browns. They, I think, just missed out on the division title based off of my season predictor thing, but they were the 5 seed as well, going up against. It might have been the Bills actually. Or yeah, it was the Bills. So in the first round of the playoffs. So I think the Browns. It's hard to say I expect them to be a Super Bowl contender because I don't know what to get from Deshaun Watson. But you go out, you traded for Deshaun Watson, you gave him that big contract. This is a top defense in the league. It was the top defense in the league last year, and so I think the expectation is they should be competing for a Super Bowl.
Oh, that should be the I mean, if you're going to pay a QB like that, then you give him this roster.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they should be Super Bowl contenders. So I have them going 11-6. That's what they went last year as well. I think this roster as a whole is too good to not be contending for an AFC North division here. And I actually have them tied with Baltimore. And so how the tiebreakers work, who knows? But I have them, I think on paper, I think their roster is better than Cincinnati. I think their roster is better than Pittsburgh. Even though that doesn't mean that they're going to win both games against both of those teams. But the big question mark to me is just going to be Deshaun Watson. Can he be the guy that he was down in Houston? Because if so, who knows? Potentially they could go 13-4, 14-3, just with this what they have on paper. Because Jerry Jeudy doesn't have to be the guy. Amari Cooper is going to be that guy. I think he also matches up well with Elijah Moore. So that receiving room, as you talked about, is great. David Njoku as well is one of the most underrated tight ends I feel in the league. It just finally had a great season last year with the guy that could sling it. And so and if Nick Chubb can stay healthy and come back, I mean, they have the perfect blend of running game and passing game, I think. So it's really just going to be how Deshaun Watson delivers. Because if he's able to be that guy, actually not even just be that guy, but be 80% of the guy that he was out of Houston, because he was on some horrible teams out in Houston. And so he doesn't need to fully be that guy, but he just needs to be consistent and better than whatever he has been during his time in Cleveland.
No, yeah, I agree. So all in all, I think the Browns, high expectations. This is the most competitive division in the NFL. I'm very curious to see how it plays out. I do want to leave off on maybe a little bit of a bold prediction, or I don't say a bold prediction, but if the Browns do what they did last year, they go 11-6, they get into the playoffs, and then they get bounced in the first round, especially in that style, I think Kevin Stefanski is out as head coach. I think you look at what the Browns did this offseason, they had a pretty heavy turnover on their offensive coaching staff. Alex Van Pelt, Scott Peters, a lot of those guys all left. Or actually, they didn't leave. They were fired from their jobs because they wanted an offense that revolved a little bit more around Deshaun Watson since they gave him all that money. And that just wasn't quite the case. They were developing the offense around him a little bit more, but then he got injured. And so I think Browns ownership is getting impatient with this Deshaun Watson experiment. And I would be, if they don't see successful results this year, I'm very curious to see how it plays out in the offseason and see if Kevin Stefanski is still around.
Well, especially too, if you look at it. So let's go down that rabbit hole. Let's say they go 11-6, just like you said, they get bounced in the first round off an embarrassing performance as well. And you have all these pieces under contract, I think, for a little while, at least for another year, I think a majority of them. Or you can easily probably run it back if you want, because majority of Deshaun Watson's cap hit, I'm pretty sure has already.
It's like fully guaranteed, I thought.
Okay. Oh, yeah, but I thought they spaced it out or something like that to where it was a bigger.
Maybe it could be.
I have to go back and look at the numbers. You have guys like Ben Johnson in Detroit who wants to get an offensive coordinator job. You have Bobby Slowick down in Houston. You have, let's see how Joe Brady does at Buffalo. 3 great offensive-minded coordinators that would love this offense, that would love this team right here and how creative they can be. So I agree with you to where if Kevin Stefanski doesn't deliver this year or doesn't show at least continual progress kind of with this team, then I can absolutely see them being like, hey, you're gone. Let's go get one of these hotshot guys who we've seen made CJ Stroud into a gone, made this Detroit Lions offense one of the best offenses that we've seen in Detroit, but also just in the NFL in a long time. Get this guy in here and his offensive mastermind into Cleveland, and who knows what can happen. So I agree with you there. I think for Kevin Stefanski, even they went 11-6 and they take them back to the playoffs, I don't think it would be enough unless they win the division and go like the AFC Championship.
Yeah, they need results this year, and if not, I'm very curious to see what happens with that Browns head coaching role. So let us know down in the comments what you think of Kevin Stefanski and what you think will happen at the end of this season. While you're at it, go ahead and like and subscribe. We appreciate all the interaction with our channel. And other than that, we will see you guys next time. All right, you want to try to do one more?
Nah, I got to get up early because we have this new girl.